School district goals, and this is what the 4 major goals we're targeting this year, related back to our strategic plan. 1, I talked to you about increasing the on-time graduation rate to 80%. I think that's doable. I think that's a minimum expectation, and that's where we want to get this next year, and then we'll continue to add on to that goal. Increase the percentage of students meeting the University of Wyoming entrance standards by 5% as measured by the ACT composite score. You're going to see that we've actually set percentages and goals this year. We haven't done that in the past. We always just say we want to improve in graduation. Well, we're trying to establish what those particular goals are. Certainly some good things about that. It's definitely a secondary focus, although everybody contributes to it throughout the entire system. But we all see articles now and then about how many of our kids have to take remediation, and they've come through our system, and we want to do a better job with that. And if we increase that, there'll be fewer of our students that will be required to take remediation. Plus, it gives opportunities, as we talked about the Hathaway Scholarship. It gives opportunities and opens up doors for students that are seeking scholarship, not only from Wyoming but from other places. The better they do, the better opportunity. And I would like to also comment a little bit about this goal. We have a number of students that enter the military. And when you go into the military, you take an exam, and it determines what kinds of jobs and positions you can get. And the better that you do on that exam, the higher level opportunities that you have. So this will also help our kids that are going to go into the military. We also have many students that go right into the workforce and careers. Again, I think the better you do here, the more you can contribute to your place of business. But what often happens with many of our students is that they'll decide to go into the workforce, a downturn in the economy or something like that occurs, and then they decide to go back to college. And they will be able to bank this ACT score if they choose to go back to college and have some education of that nature. And then in our vocational schools, and I think there's kind of some misinformation about what the requirement is there. Oftentimes, due to the technical writing, the computer skills that are now required, there was really even higher levels of math and language arts and reading that's required in many of those schools. So we think all of our students will benefit from this goal, whether they go to college or not. The third goal is to increase the district percentage of students K-8 meeting or exceeding their projected fall to MAP spring goals by 5%. It's very interesting. I've been into all but one school in our school district so far, and have not just walked into the schools, but actually been into many, many classrooms. And I can't tell you how many times I hear students talking about their MAP growth scores. I think, isn't that great? They're talking about their MAP growth scores. That's meaningful to them. It's probably the most meaningful assessment that we do. And it compares students nationally. And state, you can rewrite the exam and suddenly the scores are different, and you're looking at what does that mean? But the MAP scores, I think, are very, very meaningful to our students and to our staff. And it gives our staff an opportunity when they do a pretest to know where the kids are, and then you can actually set a learning plan for that student. And the unfortunate thing sometimes about ACT or PAWS, that's after the fact. So I think this is a very, very meaningful goal for us. And the next one is to increase the percentage of 3rd to 8th grade students who perform or proficient at advanced levels on PAWS by 5% in reading and math. I think there's going to definitely be a connection to those goal 3 and 4. There'll be a connection. If you're doing better there, you're going to do better on the other. So we just want to track that and see how we're doing. And as I look at these goals, and we talked about those other focus areas, when we talked about citizenship and some of those kinds of things, obviously that does connect back to how students do academically. And so as we write our plans and our action plans, we're going to also consider those other areas as well, not just an academic focus, but how do you shore up those other areas so the students perform well. Very excited about a lot of our new buildings, and we've been very, very fortunate in Wyoming that we have been able to have some new schools. And just show you a slide of a couple of our latest ones. The new Davis Elementary, it's a great facility. It will now house 352 students. We've added some additional classrooms to help with our crowding when we were able to get the funding to rebuild that particular facility. I've had a lot of requests from community on these new schools, and parents have told me that don't necessarily go to those schools, and community members, we'd like to see what's in there. And they're not the schools that Sandy and I went to, you know. We had chalkboards, and I mean, the technology has changed, the lighting has changed, they have learning centers where they can break kids down into small groups. And as I've been talking about that in the community, I've had lots of community people say, boy, we'd like to have an opportunity to walk through that. Well, obviously, we can't do that during the day, you know, for large groups. And so we've decided to have an additional open house for the community. And Davis will be November 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. And you can see a world, if you haven't been into an elementary in a long time, you can see it's such a different world there than what you may have personally experienced or your children may have experienced. Prairie Wind Elementary has opened this year, another new school. It houses 506 students. Beautiful school. And we're going to have an open house at that one as well. And that's November 11th, 5 to 7 p.m. I certainly appreciate those staffs willing to have the community come in it, because as I've described it, lots of people say they want to come. So please come if you're able to tour those facilities. I think you'll be amazed at what you see. And of course, we're building Meadowlark Elementary. And if you've been out to North Park where they play soccer, you may have driven by and watched it come out of the ground here. It will house 550 students, opening August 2016. And if we keep the great weather we've had, we'll certainly get there. I know Mr. Bartlett always frets about that a little bit, as well as some others, but they're making some great progress already on it. And that's the shape of the building and the design, what it will look like when it's done. And this is an article I saw in the newspaper. You know, how does this affect Laramie County School District Number 1? And this is something Sandy had mentioned, that the coal leases, there certainly are some issues there. I've been to several meetings with our legislative body as they kind of ponder how do they do this, how do they take care of it. It's probably going to require for them to look at some other funding sources. And at the last legislative meeting I was at, they talked about some ideas, and they're having the Legislative Service Office look into some ways that they can continue funding schools. And because it's not there. I mean, there's money there for this biennium, but after that, it's definitely dried up in terms of what's happened with coal leases. So they may look at some other ways to do that. I know they're in discussion of how are we going to build schools in the future. We may not build them at the same pace that they have, but they certainly are going to try to look at that and keep that going, which I was pleased to hear that. The other thing I want to talk about, what our legislature is going through, is recalibration. And what the legislature does every 5 years, and this would be our third recalibration that school districts through Wyoming have gone through, they look at what is the cost to provide a quality education for all of our students in Wyoming. And that came about because of a lawsuit in terms of funding. In our Constitution, every student really is entitled to a quality education. So our legislature has found ways to fund that, and talking a lot about the operations side of the House in terms of the recalibration. And we do have some concerns. I have to tell you that we benefited greatly from the last two recalibrations. And I think people don't often know, what we do with the additional funding. So I made a list of 102 items. I'm not going to read them all to you, but just to give you a quick idea of some of the things that have happened with after we went through those first two recalibrations. And as Sandy's mentioned, we've had up and downs, and I was in this school district when we had a downtime, and I know a few others out here in the audience have been in the same place. Very, very difficult time. But we funded things such as the International Baccalaureate that is at East High School. That's one of the things we did with the funds. We've greatly expanded our advanced placement programs in all of our schools. So we did something for the top end. That doesn't always happen, but in lots of schools. We wanted to find something to really, for those go-getters, high-achieving students that really wanted to start on college. That's a couple of the programs that we did. Yeah, we've expanded our summer school program. I mean, some of our students don't like that, obviously, but it really has made a difference. We've had extended day programs, both secondary and at the elementary. A lot of credit recovery. It's kept a lot more of our students on track to get graduation when they slip behind. Of course, I talked a little bit about the technology in our new schools, and that's also in our old schools. Every classroom has a smart board. Doesn't matter where you go to school, how old that school is, we brought up that technology. Certainly we've had some challenges. I recall back in the days when I was the central principal that if we had both computer labs operating at the same time, all the lights went out in the school. Well, we've worked on that infrastructure over the years, and now they can actually both be on at the same time. And they're not fighting with each other. Hey, don't turn on that last computer. And we still have a little bit of that in the district, but we're continuing to try to do that. We've remodeled facilities. This school, in fact, I used to, I was a drama director at East High School and I was a teacher here. And this is not the same place. And everybody in the middle, from row 3 through row 12, I start taping those off when we do performances because you couldn't hear a sound and you had to sit either in front of that or behind that. It was a really strange thing. But now this place has great acoustics, and supported technology. And of course, we remodeled Central High School, and they've lots of great improvements there as well. Built South High, built so many new schools in our school district. But we have done many, many kinds of things. We've been working on trying to get to the, at the K-3 level, the 16-to-1 mandate. I'm pleased to report in last April, we got to 16.9. Of course, I had a couple hundred students move in, and a few more than we anticipated. But by getting these new facilities, Sunrise Elementary, Freedom Elementary, the two schools, Prairie Wind, Meadowlark, that'll help us on that 16-to-1. So we've done many, many, many things. We've added lots of programs for our students. I was talking to Mr. Breen on the school board, and he's talking, needs to head out to We the People. That was one of those things that we've added since the recalibration. Mock trial, FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America. And one of the things I think is great that we've been able to do in the district with some of those funds is not only funding it at our local level, in our vocational programs, but we can send kids to national and compete. And you know what that does for Cheyenne? That develops our future leaders. Many of those kids that I've watched over the years of my career here, they are leaders in Cheyenne, in our community. They are leaders in our state, and many are leaders across the country in different places where they've gone. So we've done so much, and I hope that our legislature is able to at least keep funding level for us through this difficult time, and that they're not cutting, because we'd have to look at some programs, and I mean that would be very, very difficult kinds of decisions. They've not made those decisions. They've discussed some of the decisions, regarding funding, and should we cut some of these extra dollars we're giving to districts? But it's not only for us; it makes a difference for districts all across Wyoming. Our school resource officers have been a good asset. I don't know how many of you saw that recent video. I mean, terrible thing that happened. I think it was in North Carolina. That's not how it is in Cheyenne. I've watched our resource officers develop lifelong relationships with kids. And when a kid is troubled, oftentimes they're the first one to go talk to them. I need some help. And they have really become a resource for them. They don't do discipline in our school district like they do in other places, but they're there for student safety. And I can't tell you how many times that we've been able to call on them ahead of time so that they would, be there for us. It's not like that video. And sometimes something like that comes out nationally. Everybody starts making judgments about, are those kinds of things going on in our community? And it's just the opposite. I watch every day that they have great, great relationship with kids, and they head off a lot of things. And a kid that's deeply troubled, lots of times, that's the person that they'll go to. So they really are a part of our team. And like I said, not like what we saw nationally. But that's one of the things we're funding outside of the model that's critical to our school district that probably larger districts are going to see some of those kinds of things. Well, those are just a few of the things, and I could spend another hour up here talking about all the wonderful things that we have done through the monies from the state legislature. And certainly we need to get the message that really we need to try to keep funding at least at a level, and we can continue to provide some amazing kinds of things. You know, we have a partnership program with Laramie County Community College for our students that are over 18 and really are not fitting into the high school anymore, and they just need a few more credits to finish up. That program out there is some of the things we're doing with some of that extra funding. So it's both ends. It's throughout the entire system that we've been able to do some wonderful things for our kids. Sandy talked a little bit about this. This is the National Assessment for Education Progress. As you look at, this is how Wyoming did, and again, we're 15% of that, so we probably drive a lot of that score, what happened across the state. But as you look at this chart, right there, those are the top 12 states and how they did on NAEP. The brown is how Wyoming did. So you can see we're in that top portion. And I think sometimes you hear, well, we're more rural, it's our area, the country, you know, our students are doing better because of that. But Wyoming has the highest average of our neighboring states. And as you look at Nebraska, Colorado, Utah, and Montana, we have a higher average than they do. So I think Wyoming is doing some great things and making some difference in lots of kids' lives. This is one of the few national assessments that we get to engage in, and we can kind of see how our kids are doing compared to others in the country. You know, I'm not certainly necessarily a proponent of some sort of national test or anything of that nature, but it's good to know because many of our students throughout their careers, you know, may leave the state of Wyoming, may go to other places, and we want them to be able to compete at a high level wherever they go to college or wherever they may go to the world of work, or you know, if they're in the military, they're going to compete with people all over the United States in terms of those kinds of careers. Okay, we're going to have breakout sessions, and we're going to ask you some questions. It's not going to be real long, but we want to ask you 4 or 5 questions that'll help us finalize our action plans. The results and the action plan will be posted on the State of the District website, and we'll publish the comments that we get tonight in our December Public Schools Chronicle. Okay, they're going to start shortly. They're in room 205 to 211. That's real helpful. And actually, it's just on the other side of that wall. So if you go, not through the wall, but out to the doors and turn left, there'll be some people that will guide you to those rooms. And I guess we have cookies in all of the rooms to help entice you to come. And I thank you so much for being here. Appreciate all the board's great work, because we could not do that without them. And I appreciate the employees that came this evening to, 1, hear this, and 2, help us with this. So thank you very much, and we'll move on to the next phase.